Welcome to Toddle's School Leaders Project. On today's episode of the podcast, we welcome Raj Mundra. He's the head of school at the Lick-Wilmerding School in San Francisco, a school that values the balance between head, heart, and hand. What I love about this episode is that it's not just a masterclass in service learning, which it absolutely is, but just the language that Raj uses to affirm his school's mission and its importance in the world today, tomorrow, and beyond. You're going to come away with lots of tips of how to really structure service learning and a really clear picture of the impact that it has on students and on the larger community. You're not going to want to miss a single second of this episode. So let's jump right in. Mundra, I'm so excited to have you here on the School Leaders Project. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks. My pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. Anytime you want to talk about service learning, I've got so much to share, and I'm so glad that hopefully people are tuning in and I get to share a little bit and maybe learn from you too.
Yay. I really think this will be a masterclass on service learning. And as you mentioned kind of in the intro, your experience at Lick-Wilmerding, it's not your first kind of rodeo with service learning. It's really kind of in the blood of your teaching. So can you give us a little backstory there?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in education for over 30 years, and especially in independent school education. I've always just thought about what's the role of independent schools in America? All these resources, for a few amount of kids, and what kind of graduates are we producing to contribute back into society? And so I've really thought about citizenship as a part of my teaching. I'm a biology teacher. I used to be a football coach also.
How diverse. Science nerd and football coach?
For sure. Yeah. And citizenship, and how we show up for others, and what we do with our knowledge, is really interesting for me. And so I led a program at my former school, Phillips Academy in Andover, for 15 summers, taking students and faculty to India and really engaging in some pretty meaningful service learning work there. And I just saw the connection between service and sort of scholarship, and how service raises a type of curiosity that feeds into learning, and how schools should be a place where you can explore that, and how that sort of comes back into more meaningful and purposeful service. And so that's been, some of the best teaching and learning that I've been a part of in my career. And a couple of years ago, I was connected to Lick-Wilmerding, where service and learning and citizenship is a part of the mission of the school. And so this is a great fit for me to be in this community now.
So gorgeous. Well, what I loved about your language there is that you came back to that idea of the portrait of the graduate. And I think that's one of those things that's becoming more common in US independent schools, but can feel so kind of like theoretical or separated from daily life. And service learning is just this natural link between who do we want them to become and who are they now? So I'm curious, do you have any like magical stories from those experiences in India that kind of stand out to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many. And, the question that we entered with was, how do you understand the needs of a community you're not a part of?
Oof.
And, this could be in India, this could be sort of close, to school as well. But we found some fantastic partners in India to sort of explore this question. And the ways in which the three themes for our program were humility, empathy, and gratitude.
Gorgeous.
And when you sort of enter a community that you're not familiar with, how do you do it with great humility? How do you sort of, really pay attention to that pause between observation and judgment? How do you listen? How do you ask questions? And so, those types of skills really led to partnership with local organizations about the project that we were going to do. We never knew what project we would actually end up doing beforehand.
Oh, cool.
Because like, how could we, from, thousands of miles away and not having spoken to people there. And so the projects that we ended up doing were organic. Maybe they were related to education or health or food, or mental health. But those projects, emerged, and we had a structure for that, and it was great. I will say that there's a quote that really sticks with me from a student where, right now kids are so have a lot of stress of performing and producing,
Mm.
and that can weigh heavy on a child. But one thing a child said, and many children said in different ways, was this was one of the first times that they did something because they believed in the good of their actions and not in the promise or satisfaction of the results.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that that is a type of freeing um, feeling for kids to really dig into, I'm going to do something. I want to do something good. I want to be selfless. I want to do it with others. And we'll see what the results are, but it doesn't really matter.
Gosh. Well, and what a beautiful message, because at the core, we all are working towards the same thing, right? Developing these agentic young learners.
Yeah.
But when you're attaching that to a grade, it's so hard for it to feel authentic. And so for them to have the experience of feeling like my curiosity is a powerful thing, and that I can be curious and I can take action and not correlated to a grade, just gorgeous.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I actually see authentic service and learning as mutually activating.
Mm,
I think authentic service raises what you said, a type of curiosity,
mm.
from the heart, but also from the head, about the issue or the topic that you're sort of engaged with. And school should be a place where you can explore that, dig deeper, learn more, and when you do, again, that re-entry into service, possibly the same type, of topic, maybe something different, is more meaningful and purposeful for a kid. And it's a beautiful kind of, um, virtuous cycle,
Right.
which I've seen, and it sticks with kids. And it makes sense because it's meaningful. And they're also building skills sort of along the way.
Well, it's that right opportunity at the right moment that sparks
Yeah.
that that transition from just something being in a book to happening in real life. Just so grounding. I
Yeah.
love that. Well, and I'm so happy that you and Lick-Wilmerding found each other, because it really does sound like what your values are, what matters to you, is also so deeply ingrained in the values of the school, and like a very storied history. So might you tell us a little bit about the origins of Lick-Wilmerding and like how you found each other?
Yeah, for sure. The school was founded in 1895 um, as a technical arts school. James Lick and Jealous Wilmerding sort of started another school right next to this school that was focused on industrial arts. They combined, and so we
Mhm.
have Lick Wilmerding, and
It's a
really,
mouthful.
what's that? It's a
It
mouthful.
is a mouthful.
I know. And I think from the beginning, all the archives and folks I've spoken to, there was always an emphasis on making and building things.
Uh,
So workshops, right? Wood, metal, electronics, jewelry, um, and the idea of sort of an educated craftsman, sort of coming, from these schools and contributing back into the communities that they, came from. And so a lot of our graduates built the infrastructure of San Francisco, including the Golden Gate Bridge, and I think that there was always an ethic of like, we are grateful for this opportunity. Students paid no tuition to come to the school. In fact, they paid no tuition for 78 years, um, based on an initial endowment for these, technical arts, industrial arts schools. And
Cool.
yeah, and so I think that there was always a feeling of sort of giving back. And so we have kept that spirit of industrial arts and technical arts in our curriculum. The kids take wood shop and metal and jewelry making and electronics, and the kids love it. The kids love it, and we also have sort of a college prep, curricula now as well. And so I knew about Lick-Wilmerding because of a phrase in their mission statement that we are a private school with public purpose.
Cool.
Yeah. And it resonated with me in what I thought private school education should be all about, and the challenges of doing that really well, in partnering with local communities and designing a program for graduates to be civically engaged. What also another phrase in their mission is that they believe in an alignment of head, heart, and hand within our curriculum. And sort of this integrity of, thinking, feeling, doing is sort of always in the air, in the classes that you take here. And so that is the way, I approached my classes teaching biology. And here I was like, oh, wow, there's a whole school,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Found my people.
Really, that's really sort of focused on this. So yeah, we're thrilled to be here.
I love it. I kind of want to jump into some of the nitty gritty here. So what I love when I was talking with you and Monica about Lick-Wilmerding is just kind of this, it's like a service ecosystem was the best term I could come up with to describe it.
Yeah.
So could you describe a little bit of what does the kind of service learning infrastructure look like at your school?
Sure. Again, we sort of look to our mission and sort of feel like we have a head, heart, and hands curriculum. And I would say that right when you walk in the front doors of our school, we have right front and center, the Center for Civic Engagement. And that is a really important spot in our school. And in ways that connects with our academic curriculum, it connects with our DEI efforts. It's a nice kind of spot to kind of, orient ourselves every day. Practically, in the 9th grade, when students come, we have a whole program for the year that talks about privilege, community, volunteerism, and really sort of explores that with kids, sort of, the foundation for a lot of things. And kids will really sort of engage, with that and want to learn more. In the 10th grade, the students, they do have some mandatory hours that they are, have to fulfill. But when I'm with sophomores, we are assigned to, different community organizations related to food or housing or health or education. And kids really sort of, dig in, and I'm really interested in how that raises their level of curiosity. What kind of questions, sort of emerge. I went with a bunch of 10th graders last week to Hawk Creek Farm, and we were there for a couple of hours. We were actually sort of moving mulch from one part of the farm to another part of the farm because they were going to have an event there. But at the end, I asked the kids, what kind of questions, does being here sort of raise for you? And kids talked about, like, what's our interdependence, with nature, and the food that we have at Lick-Wilmerding for lunch every day, how is that sourced, from local farms here, and what's the benefit of having a farm right in the middle of an urban area, and so, like, these questions sort of arise. In the 11th and 12th grade, kids take courses. We have specific courses that we call PPP courses, private school public purpose courses.
Okay.
Yeah, where as a part of your graduation requirement, you are required to take service learning courses.
Cool.
And so, yeah, and so that can sort of span, all the departments are making these offerings. Kids can also end up doing independent projects on their own, or thinking about PPP projects that are going to benefit our community in different ways. And so there are lots of different kind of options, but it's sort of scaffolded and it builds.
Makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, yeah. And when I talk to seniors, they really sort of look back and say, you know what? There was an intention, and there was sort of a habit of mind that was developing, for them about how is what I'm learning
Apply
related.
elsewhere.
Yeah, applied elsewhere. Yeah.
Cool. So pare it back and correct me anywhere here. Are these projects, like all the different projects that you're involved with, are those found and organized by the Center for Civic Engagement? Or are those brought to you by students or staff or kind of all of the above?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Okay. So you have like
um,
a repository of possible projects that we've been involved in.
yes. So, yes, certainly the Center for Civic Engagement is great leadership there, that helped to, well, we will always listen to ideas, both from kids and from local organizations that know, that we have kids, often available to support their work.
Cool.
We also say no sometimes,
Okay.
when we feel like, I don't know if this is going to be sustainable, or does this really sort of fit, what is going to be good, for the student or long term for the organization, or we've had a history, with different things. And so we're really careful about this relationship. You have to be careful with kids and local partners.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And two questions that I always think about with local partners is, what do you believe? What do you believe in? And how do you define success?
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think those are good sort of questions to kind of start, a conversation to see, is this going to be a good fit?
Are we going
How
to
can
resonate
we,
with each
yeah,
other?
how can we contribute, and we may get something else different from the experience than they might, but we want to be sure that we are contributing.
Beautiful. So your firm goal is that it's mission aligned
Yeah.
and that you have similar pictures of success. You'll have clarity on what success might look like. The kind of learning pathway to get there is flexible, but those are kind of the non-negotiables.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I guess another wondering I have is I know there's a really strong apprenticeship focus, and you touched on the fact that there are a bunch of like workshops and jewelry making and woodworking. Are the projects organized by almost discipline in that way? Like if I'm studying jewelry making, then I go to like some kind of community jewelry thing, or like what is the organizing structure for learners?
Yeah. So I think, kids get a little bit of a taste of everything in their ninth
Okay.
and 10th grade, and then some kids will choose to say, you know what, I really want to go further, in these sort of areas. And, kids can do that. Other kids will say, you know what, I'm awesome experience and applicable. And I'm also interested in languages, or math, or, humanities. And so they'll focus their electives, in the 11th and 12th grade, there. Often it continues to be a mix because even if kids aren't sort of 100% into the industrial arts or technical arts, they still see great value in what they're learning there. And so that's sort of, really interesting for me.
That's
Uh,
really. Can you list off? I know there are a ton of different workshops, but what are kind of the main areas that students can explore apprenticeship in?
yeah. So, I guess, apprenticeship
It's maybe a
depends on
loaded term.
how you define it. There could be kids who take advanced level courses, you know, um, in a particular area like wood or metal. We have an incredible architecture program here as well. And so perhaps it feels like in some ways like an apprenticeship because you have a teacher sort of teaching you, particular skills to make things and to build things. But our kids are probably not like hired in high school, with local organizations, that way. But for example, a couple years ago in a wood class, I was visiting the school. I said, hey, what are you making? And they said, oh, we're making tables and chairs. I said, oh, that's great. I said, how did you choose that? I said, oh, well, every year we have a request for proposals that we put out in the community. And we liked one from a third grade classroom in Oakland. And so we ended up visiting and talking to the kids and the teacher, and they needed tables and chairs. And so like, that's what we're doing now.
Cool.
Yeah. And I think, when the work becomes public, and the kids know that it's going to be used, there's just like a higher level of both meaning and like responsibility, that the kids have. And there's so
Instead
many
of a
courses
bird
like,
cage or something. Yeah. Let's all
right.
make a birdhouse. Let's all make a ceramic vase or something. And if instead it's going out towards
Yeah.
real world problem solving, just the value that adds to the entire experience.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I think the bird cage and the vase are still also very good things.
Not to, throw shade on the bird cage, but
But this is also, a path that really resonates with kids.
I love that. The other piece I wanted to talk and kind of Lick-Wilmerding specifically is that not only are students engaged in these kind of local projects and building things with their hands that go out and make the world a better place, awesome, but there's also a level of engagement, civic engagement with the local government. And I
Yes.
hear that there's even a student on the local like district council. Can you talk about that partnership and what kids get out of it and what that looks like for you guys?
Yeah, it's fantastic. We're in District 7 in San Francisco. And so there's a District 7 Youth Council,
Oh, okay.
that we host that includes kids from outside of our school and also within our school. And so that group meets regularly and they talk about projects in the city. They review sometimes they review legislation to kind of that are addressing youth concerns. They may even propose legislation as well.
Cool.
And it's a really nice kind of interaction, with our local officials there. But again, the skills that you learn, about, drafting and positioning and editing and presenting, are all real issues here, that result in real policies, in the community. And so that's a lot of fun. Kids end up doing internships out of that, with different officials, or sometimes we have officials come to campus to speak, as well, to the larger community about different things.
That's awesome. I'm curious because I feel like what I love about your language, again, is that you keep coming back to this idea of a very intentional curriculum
Yeah.
and a curriculum that doesn't just sit in our school walls, but
Yeah.
that transcends them. And I wonder, like, do you feel that that's really well documented in your school of how that curriculum is all set up and how it all interacts? Or is it more of an organic thing that happens in individual classrooms?
Yeah, it's kind of both. I think some classes, especially the PPP classes, even within the PPP classes, I think there are different ways to kind of define public purpose. Some are more active and engaged, and kids are doing things. Other classes, there may be more of kind of understanding systems,
Mm.
and ways that things work. And so I think, people sort of interpret public purpose, widely. Um, I would love to see, in my dream of dreams, every class sort of have a statement in their syllabus about how what they're learning is connected, to the public good.
Cool.
And I think a lot of classes already do that. I think I think at a lot of other schools as well. But I think making that intentional for kids, every class that you go to, you are learning, in the service of doing something good, in the public, public sphere. So we're not, there yet. And I think, we need support. We probably need more professional development around this type of teaching and learning. And I call it, and others call it public purpose pedagogy. It's a different type.
Please, Raj.
Yeah, throwing around things. But I think that there's something there. So that's something to explore, learn more about.
Well, and something that it feels like so much of great teaching and learning is organic and happens, but how powerful that might be if you could document it and share it with others, like in potentially the conference that you're talking about. If a product that came away from that was a curriculum that was replicable in different schools, would just be, I mean, there's so much potential, which is so fun to see.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think we can do a better job of sharing. I think we can do a better job of just learning from others also who are doing, some really similar things or interested, taking a different angle, on this. So that's kind of fun.
I love it. The other thing that you, I think, are bringing to the school, which, I mean, you've got the experience from the past, but it sounds like you're kind of pulling it more in. It's not just the local interaction, but also that global perspective. So what are your kind of hopes in the next few years in terms of incorporating more global service?
Yeah. So I would say, I have a lot of experience with global programs, and I've taught on 4 continents, lived and taught. And I think that there's great value for kids to be outside of the United States for some time. And when that happens, in my experience, when you set it up well, kids will make lots of observations about the new communities that they're in. And that will often lead to some really basic questions about social structures, about inequalities or polarization or gender or race, the things that they see there. And there's always sort of a moment where kids are asking questions where then we sort of flip and say, wait a minute, those are the same questions we should be asking about our own communities.
Yes.
And sometimes it's harder to get to those questions when you're in it.
Right. It's because that's just normal.
Right. And that's just normal, but I think, so one way is to sort of be in different communities. I'm also really open to not just sort of going outside of the United States to do this, but we have such a diverse set of communities, obviously, in our United States. And so, thinking about how to encourage kids to use what they're learning, this habit of head, heart, and hand. And if you can find organizations and partnerships with communities that you're not familiar with, I'll share an example. We went to a fantastic sustainability conference in Switzerland this past summer. A group of students, there were schools from around the world there, the Villars Institute. And there was a great presentation about data, and incredible by Johan Rockström, who has these 9 planetary boundaries and all this data, about where we are and what we've crossed. And, one of our students at my table, we were sort of debriefing with a group of adults and kids afterwards, talking about the data. But this student said, let's continue to talk about the data. Let's also just talk about how do you get people to care and how do you get people to act? And sort of this like mindset of like, okay, like how are we connecting the head to the heart and the hand?
And you're just like, yes, yes, yes.
Yes, I know, but it happens. Like I'm finding that it happens often, in non-academic settings also, like this habit of just thinking about, okay, like I think I'm understanding this situation, I'm learning more from it, and now so what? And like what does this mean if I like care about this? and want to act on it.
Well, in so many schools, it's like, I think, therefore I am. And this is like, I know, therefore I do.
It's true. It's true.
A
Yeah,
very cool, like, that's just what they've grown up seeing and experiencing, is that my skill set is a privilege, and how do I leverage it for good?
correct. And I think if it happens in classes, if it happens outside of classes, even with sports teams, and performing arts, and it hopefully becomes a habit.
Right.
And this is the way you interact with the world, in terms of building, contributing back, understanding needs, pursuing things that you care about.
So cool, Raj.
Yeah.
Let's turn to some more of the ways that you personally make it happen, because I think you seem to be pretty pivotal in the process. I'm curious, how do you see school leadership kind of driving the integration of service learning into the curriculum? Like, what is your role in that?
Yeah. So, I'm this is my second year. I'm picking up from some great leadership,
Right.
both, heads of school, but also our administrative teams, our board, in the past, folks who have really sort of believed in this and supported it in lots of different ways. And so, I think we continue to have to really believe that this is mission aligned.
Hmm.
This is core to what we
Not
do.
extra. Yeah.
Yeah, not extra. And sometimes there are pressures, to say, well, could we have, more academic theory classes, and sort of pushing back and say, no, actually, like, we really value the connection between theory and practice,
Yes.
and, this is the right thing to do, even if some folks might say, well, how attractive is that to colleges? You know, um,
Do you get
we
that question often?
we do, yeah, and I think it's a fair question, but I think the colleges are pretty attracted to our program. So one is mission. I think continuing to sort of center the Center for Civic Engagement in our work, and connecting it to our curriculum, and our DEI efforts. We have more work to do there, but that's the good work we need to do.
Mm.
I think time and space in our schedule, right? For kids to go on field trips, for kids to have the ability to during the school day or during the year to really sort of engage with the community. That takes away time from classroom time,
Right.
which some people feel and it is so important. So sort of like finding, that balance.
How
I
do
think
you find
also,
that balance? Have you changed the schedule a lot, or are there like little tweaks you've made that you're like, yeah, share this tip?
so sometimes we have like designated days
Cool.
for PPP work. And so that could be classes, it could be other projects, these 10th grade projects, things like that. And there are lots of different models that the school has tried over the year. Let's do a whole week, and just kind of like engage deeply, versus, let's spread it out, during the year and do it in that way. But I think that's always, the schedule is a reflection of what you believe, what you put your time into. And so sort of thinking where we're sort of in a reimagining our schedule right now. And so we'll see sort of what emerges from that. But I think, part of whatever emerges is going to be, how does this support, this type of learning here? I also think the final thing I would say is just hiring, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Okay.
getting people, and also admissions, getting kids, who are attracted to this type of education,
Right.
um, and sort of really sort of understanding like this is a little bit different, and just making sure that we have people sort of coming in, who believe it.
And does that come down to marketing, or what do you think is the biggest mover there for getting the right people in the seats?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of marketing, but it's also just the process we have, of we're in a fortunate position where we have lots of kids and lots of adults who want to be a part of our community. So
I
that's
want to
really,
be part of it. Like, everybody wants to be part of it. It sounds so cool.
and so just really being thorough and fair, in our processes and getting to know people. And then, at some point you take a leap of faith and say, join us, and we've been pretty fortunate that we have a really, really great community here.
Well, I just love that because it's that extra push. It's beyond numbers. It's beyond, it's work worth doing. Teachers are always going to be motivated by work worth doing, but you're saying you're part of our community now. And if part of our community's head, heart, and hand and fulfilling this purpose, how are we making sure that you're feeling that sense of alignment and purpose, which is just, it's very cool to see your mission resonate in so many different aspects of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, no, and it's a team effort. So I'm really proud to be a part of the team here.
Okay. 2 last questions for you. I'm turning to leaders now who are hearing your story, Raj, and they're inspired and they want to incorporate more service learning. Mm-hmm. What would you say is your just like the biggest challenge that you've faced and how you'd suggest overcoming that challenge?
Mm-hmm. I would say right now, sort of post-pandemic, there was a lot of people doing great work, but it wasn't necessarily aligned. Mm-hmm. And people were also feeling themselves overwhelmed with work. And so I think hopefully we're emerging from that. I think creating time and space for teachers to really learn and to be able to collaborate and to be able to then, be able to deliver, this type of opportunities. I think you need a center, something like a Center for Civic Engagement whose focus is on partnerships.
Connections.
And can really sort of think about, which partners might be sort of, appropriate. So I think that's a significant challenge, is to create, that environment. I really believe that teachers and maybe giving teachers and administrators and practicing service learning ourselves.
Yeah.
And just sort of understanding like what this means, what this could mean, how could we do this, in more sustained ways. So there's that. I think, just the pressures of colleges and sort of like, is service learning, like, is that where, our focuses should be compared to, more AP classes, for example, right? Which has, pretty standard and strict curriculum to follow, but doesn't necessarily take kids outside, of the school and engage, with partners, and I think there are schools who do that really well. And, we have decided not to, and sometimes we may get pressure from others to sort of reconsider. But I think just sort of staying true to that, because we know, it is, this is what's going to set kids up well in the future.
Can you just say that again louder? Because I think if people take away one thing from this episode, that's phrase. There are lots of schools who prioritize that and do that really well. And This is what our school prioritizes. Are you part of this vision with us? And not letting that become a pressure to take you away from your mission, because you guys could do an awesome job at being an SAT prep school and being a college prep school. And that your kids are ready for college, but that's not the path that you're choosing to take to get there. And I just think there's so much beauty in that message.
It's true. Yeah. And, it's what attracted me, to be a part of the community. I think it's the work that is driving, I would say, the adult community here. Right. It's why people feel so passionate, and want to just see it work. But it's not easy also.
Absolutely lovely. What a lovely conversation. Just thank you so much, Raj. I think I'm going to have to listen back to this one a few times to glean all that there was, but just a delight and really a privilege to hear your thinking on this.
No, well, thank you for this forum and this opportunity. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you when you come to San Francisco and visit our school and connect with our community. And so, thanks.
Thanks.